Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pisces Town episode of Weekend Wisdom.
I love
Happy
Pisces
Saturday.
Town. Let's
You
go.
would. Yeah, you would. Today, we are going to be talking about the dignity scheme and how different planets function in Pisces. We're going to be talking about Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Neptune, all working their magic in Pisces, or maybe not so magical in Pisces. How are you guys doing? How's this little Pisces season treating you so far?
I'm tired. I'm like, Pisces season is always like, I don't know, like, I'm fine, man. I'm good. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like the last gasp of winter, right? Where you're like,
Yeah.
just give me some sunshine. I need a
Yeah.
little bit more vitamin D in my life. Yeah.
I like
same.
winter too. But, like, by this point in the winter, I'm like, I'm all set. I'm all set.
All set.
I want, like, yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah.
I always think
get
of
the
this
snow.
as the time, like when I was living in New York, of there's a time period where the snow on the sidewalks, it's all gray because it's been there for months, and it's like scabby ice. It's like these gray little ice scabs.
That's what
And
we
you're
have
just
right
like,
now.
this is
Yeah.
gross, vile stuff. Get rid of it.
Dirty slush. I know here in Minnesota, it's funny because March is always like the highest snowfall month of the year, which sounds like, wouldn't you think it's in the deep of winter? But
Yeah.
no, the deep of winter is too cold. So March is like the perfect season for that sort of like heavy snow. But then the heavy snow just gets like sloppy and gross. I remember last year in Pisces season, I literally like slipped on the sidewalk in a pile of slush and hurt my foot. Pisces, right? Pisces rules the feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really like, and I think, doesn't that exemplify Pisces? Like, you're hoping for spring, right? You can hear Pisces in everything we're saying. I'm hoping for the light. I'm hoping for something more, but you're still kind of in this like dark space. I always think Pisces is so interesting because my observation of Pisces, and you guys who have Pisces placements can chime in the comments around this, is they're a little bit caught between worlds. There's a feeling of like, there's like, I want to be somewhere, but I know where I am. And then there's a tension that's kind of pulling at them. I think it can be a challenging sign in that regard. Both Virgo and Pisces, for that sort of like, the light's here, but it's not here, or it's descending, but it hasn't descended yet. That kind of anticipatory stuff is really interesting in the sign.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit of a teaser to our Pisces celebrity charts episode, but one of the people whose chart we have chosen, who is a Pisces sun, often refers to themselves as an optimistic nihilist. And I feel like that tension in there is so Jupiterian, and it's also so Piscean specifically, is like optimism that verges on resignation to complete failure, and pessimism and nihilism right there.
Well, exactly, because Pisces is a mutable water sign, right? It's feminine and nocturnal. It's the sign of the two fishes, right? One fish is swimming toward the heaven and another is pulled back down to the earth. It's that same sort of dualistic juxtaposition that I think adds a lot of nuance to the sign of Pisces.
Totally. I think we're ready to, you're priming us perfectly. I'm going to put a pin in the two fishes, and we're coming right back to that because it's beautiful. I just want to set us up a little bit before we come into Pisces. As always, first things first, thanks to our darling host, Adam Elenbaas, Nightlight Astrology. You guys, I say it every month, but Nightlight is a school of astrology, really just like an apprenticeship track of astrology that totally changed my life. You should go check out the classes and the workshops and the master classes. And also, Adam is doing a lot of free event series right now to support people in these trying times, trademark. So definitely go to nightlightastrology.com and check that out. And every month we meet here and we talk about the dignity scheme. I make Alex trot out his tired old metaphor. He's going to do it again for us. Go on, Show Pony. Tell us about the dignity scheme.
Hi, I'm Alex, and I'm going to tell you about the dignity scheme. And you can always trot me up because I'm a Leo and I want to be the center of attention. I'm a Leo rising. And you
Reliable.
all have to know that I'm in Leo rising every time because I'm Leo rising. So this is how dignities work in my mind. When a planet is in its own sign, so when Jupiter is in Pisces, Jupiter is at home. Jupiter knows how to be in Pisces. Jupiter is familiar with the terrain of Pisces. Jupiter knows where the store is. Jupiter knows where the towels are. Jupiter knows the town like the back of its hand. It can just get around very easily. So there's a lot of facility with being in Pisces, meaning that it's easier for that planet to be at home. It's like when any of us are in our home, we just know where everything is. It's comfortable. It feels safe. It's like it's contained, that kind of feeling. When Jupiter is in Virgo, Jupiter is in the opposite sign from Pisces. It's like Jupiter is in a foreign country. It doesn't mean Jupiter is bad in Virgo. It doesn't mean that your life is screwed if Jupiter is in Virgo. It doesn't mean that your karma is terrible and you're paying off some sort of like debt or something like that. All it means is, from my perspective, your soul chose a dissonance for this lifetime to understand what it was like to experience things in an environment that's not familiar, and how to learn in that environment, and how to grow in that environment, and how to expand beyond what you would only, like, you can only expand to the degree that you get into the unfamiliar. And so when you're in your own space, it's like, well, I know this space. It's really easy. I get around. It's fine. But when you go to a foreign country, especially where you don't speak the language or you know the culture, don't know the culture, you have to learn that. And it never quite feels like you. But at the same time, there's so many incredible growth experiences. Like, you learn to speak another language. You learn how to be in another culture. You learn how people relate to each other in different societies and cultures and all this sort of thing. So I often think the planets in exile, while yes, they can have their challenges, are really wonderful gifts and opportunities of expansion and showing yourself like, yes, you are capable of complexity and dissonance and existing in cultural environments that may not feel altogether like you, but you're capable of it and you learn a lot from it. So, speech over.
I love how you did that through such a Pisces lens to the quality of expansion we get through planets that are not in their natural dignity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
And,
totally.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, nothing. I was just going to say, like, you know, some of the best experiences I've had with traveling, especially in countries where I've had to learn the language, was the ability to learn the language and learn how other people think, because you have to learn how another language functions and people think differently, like cultural, just differences in people think, and how that affects, you know, Mercury's strong in my chart. So like, it affects your communication, affects the way you see the world. And it's super interesting. It's not always comfortable, but it's interesting and it's expansive. That was just my point.
Totally. Yeah. In this metaphor, I mean, it always makes me think of my own travel experiences and think about the ways that we can find allies in the chart as well. For example, when I was in Taiwan, there's just no way I'm going to understand the written language in Taiwan. That's not going to happen. I must rely on other people to help me, or maybe Google, you know, but in a lot of cases, I was asking really friendly, kind, beautiful people of Taiwan to help me navigate. Whereas in France, it's like, I've taken 4 years of French study. I don't speak French, but I can reliably figure out where I'm going on the train because I actually do have some of that experience in that context. You know, and then in London, in some ways the train's even more confusing there, or there's more that could go wrong, but I reliably can actually figure out, completely access all of the language that's being used based on my experience. So that's another way when we look at dignity scheme, we're looking at rulership. So say you have, you know, Jupiter in Virgo, it's like what's going on in Sagittarius and Pisces. So we're looking for allies, we're looking for mutual reception or regular reception, or we're looking for a really strong Saturn to come through and say, okay, maybe you don't speak the language, but you have really good situational awareness, so you're able to make these decisions. So it's just a really complex thing, the dignity scheme, that I think all of us feel rankled by the idea of reducing it to a chart or a point system. And this is why these episodes have been so fun to film.
Well, and also just like, you know, we've talked about in several ways, like not using it as a good bad judgment call, and then using it as a way to sort of limit yourself or feel limited even by an astrologer, like saying like, well, you have Mercury in Pisces, so you're screwed. No, you're not. And you don't want to. And self-fulfilling prophecy really is a thing, and it's really
Oh my
important
God.
to look at the complexity, because that helps us see the richness and the less and the beauty in all of this, not just the challenges that we then self-impose on ourselves.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
yeah, I just want to add that kind of like what you were saying, Alexandra, about leaning on support and finding support. I think that is when you have a good astrologer who understands the nuance that comes with the dignities, right? That it isn't just a plus or minus sort of equation. Then you're able to sort of creatively integrate certain techniques to boost that understanding or boost that support. You know what I mean? I'm also just stuck on the fact, Alexandra, that you are like navigating the London Underground so smoothly, that like spaghetti plop of of routes. Whoa.
Well, I lived in New York for a while. And so I feel like, see, that's what I'm saying. Like living in New York, I had those experiences. I brought that context to London and Paris and Italy. Like those were places I could get around just fine. Taiwan, we needed help everywhere we went.
Yeah.
I'm not ending up in the south of this island. I need help.
We were
so-
glued to our iPhones in Tokyo. Like getting around Tokyo, like it really helped. But Google Maps got us through it. But like there was no way we were leaving. We were like glued to it. Like, okay, we're going here.
Yeah, I
this
think
exit. This exit. This yeah.
it was really cool to have the translation capability in the south of Taiwan. Like, but I was shocked. Like they let us rent motorcycles. I'm like, we don't even. How can you even believe that we can read street signs? But also, thanks, we'll be going now. Like we're going before you ask any more
Vroom,
questions. Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about Pisces, let's come back to the fish, because Whitney, I think that that's really beautiful. I don't think we press hard enough into the archetypes and the icons of the signs. Also, I think Whitney has the most Pisces credentials of all of us. So my Pisces house is empty, but Jupiter plays a loud role in my chart. Alex, what are your Pisces credentials? And then Whit,
South
kick
node.
us off.
South node of
Okay.
Pisces. Yeah.
Oh, so you're having a flip nodal return is what they call it, or a nodal opposition.
He is, and I am having my nodal return. I have the North Node in Pisces, conjunct Venus in Pisces. So, yeah, I got some Pisces cred, y'all.
Ooh, magnetic. She just
That's
pulls
so-
in what she needs.
You know
Yep.
what? It's so funny. I know we're going to speak in a certain order about the planets, but yes, I feel like that is one of the biggest strengths to Venus in her exaltation, is that sort of power of attraction quality, right? But I don't know. I guess we can tie that too if we want to talk about some of the symbolism of those two fishes. Like I always like to go back to the archetypal creation myths, and I'm actually not talking about the creation myth of Venus. We can get to that when we come to it, right? The birth of Venus. But the actual symbolism of the fishes, the two fishes, came from Greek Roman myth, right? With Aphrodite and Eros, or Venus and Cupid, when they escaped the monster Typhon by jumping into a river, tying themselves together and transforming into fishes. And of course, like all of the constellations, because of this amazing escape, the fishes were honored in eternity by casting them up into the sky, right? Which is why when you look at the constellation, it's almost like they are connected by that rope. And I just love I just love the mythic archetypal creation stories when we look at these. And I think that is one of the most interesting things about Pisces, this way that, Pisces is a very liminal sign. It is where the world dissolves and gives way to spirit. I think even just the act of casting an actual earthly symbol of fishes up into the sky is Pisces in itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, somebody say something. I don't know. I can keep going.
We were having a Gemini Sag standoff.
You're like, yeah. No, I'm humble. No, I'm humble. No, I'm humble.
Also,
I'm
like
more humble.
two Leos in a room, they might ignore each other.
Oh yeah.
They're just like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. What did you say? Oh yeah. I was thinking about what I'm gonna say. No, I love that because it's funny. We just saw when we were in Flagstaff over Christmas break. We were at the planetarium, the Lowell Observatory, where they discovered Pluto, and Pisces was really high in the sky that night when we were at the planetarium, the outdoor planetarium. So you saw like it has that feeling of one fish is going out towards Aries, one fish is going back towards Aquarius, one fish you can see so clearly in the outline of the stars, like spring, winter, looking behind me, looking ahead of me. And I think that it also speaks to something in Pisces, the tension in Pisces that I think is very strong that I alluded to at the beginning, which is there's a strong nostalgic aspect to Pisces. Looking at the past, looking at the fish who's looking back towards Aquarius, looking back towards the wintertime, what has been, what has already been created. And there can sometimes be a rosy film that comes over that, or rosy lenses that look back at that, which is very much how Neptune is, very much associated with Pisces, because Neptune has that too. And they're caught between that and then this desire to move into something that is uncreated yet. So there's like this tension between what has been and has already been created and feels familiar and safe and I know. And then the tension between moving towards something that's kind of new and interesting and stimulating and expansive like the springtime. And then like they're tied together, right? So it's like that feeling of, well, I want this and I want this at the same time. And I think sometimes that produces in Pisces a difficult tension. It's one they can learn to work with, but those signs, Pisces and Virgo straddling the equinoxes, can be challenging in that regard.
yeah, I was writing in a note here because I do feel like what we're getting at is the double-bodied nature of Pisces. And I hate to reach for this. It feels lazy, and I pride myself on being a good astrologer, but I am not sure you can really understand that feeling unless you have something mutable. There's a theoretical understanding of like, yeah, but it verges so quickly into two-faced, or they'll believe anything, or these things. It's I have friends who literally can't understand how you can hold two things as true at the same time, or three things as true, or five things as true, or stand in a place where you are willing to say, I'll believe anything if you give me the evidence to back it up. I'm willing to change my mind right now if you can change my mind right now. People don't I don't know that everybody understands that feeling. And I think Pisces, that's part of the tension they have to hold, is being seen as sort of weak of mind or feeble of mind, or maybe flaky or flighty, because they are willing to evaporate their even deeply held convictions the moment that somebody changes their mind and presents better information to them.
When really, I think it's all about the fact of infinite possibility, right? This universe
Yes.
is full of so many things that we don't understand, right? And the power of Pisces is to be able to look at that, look at the unknown and identify, wow, there's so much that we don't know that is out here. I think that also comes in with Pisces as the last sign of the zodiac, right? There's this way in which Pisces sort of like carries this residue or continues the story from each of the other preceding zodiac signs. So when you get to that point before we could call Aries as incarnation or reincarnation, there are lifetimes of lessons that are held that can look completely different from one another, because it is both expansive and comprehensive of the whole.
Yeah, I think these are such good points to bring up, because one of the Pisces friends of mine will often say, like, why does everybody treat me like I need to be taken care of, or I need to be, sort of led or told what? And it's, to me, I think it's very much about that idea of, because you're adaptable in what you see, and you're also, like, I think that's such a great point, Whitney. You're compiling a lot of different experiences, and you can switch between them. They meld together in Jupiter's water sign, right? They all meld into sort of one thing. And so to the outside, it can look like this person doesn't have a steady track, or they don't have a steady way, they don't have a steady sort of consciousness moving forward. But the next time someone says that to you, Pisces, remind them Einstein was a Pisces, and would not have been able to, this whole genesis, I believe, of relativity, has been a while since I've read his biography, so forgive me if I'm off on this, but was imagining being on a train, and the light would move on the train, and it would hit slower in the mirrors, and that's how he began to come to this understanding from an image or an inspiration of seeing this clock, a theory of physics that completely changed the way we understand the universe. And so I think that when you look at it from that sense of, your mind is not feeble, right? Or it's not like easily manipulated. I guess it could be in the shadow sense. There is that quality to it. It's something that is able to absorb information and see it in poetic and imagic ways. And that is an incredible, incredible strength to have.
Totally. And I think what you're both touching on as well is sort of the horseshoe theory, where a belief held so strongly can come much closer to the oppositional belief than it can to the moderate position. And so I think about this, I'm really specifically thinking about a work of art that I am going to show you guys. I'm going to screen share and hopefully it comes through. Can you see the neon?
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is a Bruce Nauman work, and different parts of it light up at different times. So it'll say things like knows doesn't care, cares doesn't know, knows doesn't matter. And it's like, this to me is so Pisces, especially the one where it lights up and it says like cares doesn't care, because it feels like that horseshoe thing where it's like, I think Pisces can sometimes care so much that they're like, I actually care so much about this, I would surrender all care about it. I know I care so much I don't care. And it kind of is this like horseshoe theory a little bit.
Oh my gosh, yes, that is so cool. And what I love that you brought that image in for us sort of reaffirms what Alex was saying about the whole Einstein theory that I never knew.
Yes, exactly.
Whoa. And this but the part that sort of tickled my little Pisces brain into realization was this relationship to light, right? And when you are at the darkest point, not the darkest point of the year, but where you are at the turn of the season, right? The turn into springtime, you have this different sort of relationship to light, the way that light feels, looks, glimmers, and that relationship to light is held in opposition. It is held in the relationship of darkness and light. So I thought that was really beautiful how that all came together there.
Yeah, let's talk specifically about Jupiter in Pisces and how that expresses, because I think that's a good place to start, Whitney. I feel like for me, maybe the most prominent quality, because of my special interest in astrology, which is researching magnetism and luck, and why certain people are good at manifesting and why some people can't seem to figure out how to make that work for them. when I see a Jupiter in Pisces, I am like, well, my job here is going to be very easy. This is a lucky person. This person has luck with a dignified Jupiter in a way that I think other people don't always get to experience. Depends whether you're a day chart or a night chart, of course. But I think Jupiter and Pisces as being very interested in the Jupiterian pursuits, language, learning, big visionary ideas, foreign cultures, even, and definitely philosophies and philosophical systems, and having a sort of like luck in wherever it's situated in the chart. What do you guys think about Jupiter and Pisces?
Yeah, Jupiter in Pisces, I feel like, is how Liz Green frames it, right? Jupiter symbolizes the quest for meaning. That is absolutely everything that you're saying, right? I love that you tie that idea of luck to it, right? This is, after all, the greater benefic. I mean, Pisces also has the lesser benefic in dignity here. But what is interesting to me is how we frame the difference between like Jupiter in Sagittarius and Jupiter in Pisces, right? Because this is a feminine watery sign. This is the feminine watery expression of Jupiter. It's like, instead of the philosopher, it's the priestess, right? It is the sort of mystery schools. If Jupiter in Sagittarius is like the doctrine, like the religious doctrine, well, then it's almost like Pisces is the baptism. It's like how we become immersed in that or initiated into that. And I think that that's one of the most major designations, right? Because Jupiter in either sign is known for that expansiveness. I think Pisces, we use the key word a lot, transcendent, right? But Jupiter is buoyant in either sign. It just floats a lot more in the sign of Pisces, right? This expansive, last, feminine, watery sign.
It's interesting. So if we're comparing them, was it last month or maybe the month before, we were talking about Tony Robbins. We were talking about Sagittarius. It was a couple months ago, and he has Jupiter in Sagittarius, right? In literally imprinting belief, right? Taking belief externally, fire active masculine sign, and implanting that belief or trying to do so in people. You think about Jupiter in Pisces, and Lady Gaga has Jupiter in Pisces, right? And you think about like how her artistry, because it rules, it's in her 10th house, right? It's not, she does have very bold messages. She has an Aries sun. She has she definitely, speaks her mind and says what she says, but there's a sort of influential quality that her music and her whole presentation has that I think is more Jupiter in Pisces, where it's like it influences not by saying like, I'm up on stage and I'm 6'7" and you just believe that it's not doing that. It's saying, here, my whole presentation of who I am is influencing you in some way. And that's the feminine water expression of Jupiter, and it's expansive, but it's not expansive in the sense of like the sort of boundless external optimism of Sagittarius. It's the sense of inner expansion, like the inner expansion of the imagination and the inner world is equally as infinite as Jupiter would like to think it is. But it just influences in a softer, different way. It's more of like its presentation, just being, will do that, which is more of the feminine expression.
Gosh, that's so brilliant. I'm just obsessively looking up some natal charts over here. But I think when you think about the difference between Jupiter and Sagittarius, and Tony Robbins, it just is a classic one. But I got to pull up his chart too and remember why we were talking about that. I think of Jupiter in Sagittarius and in Pisces and that horseshoe theory, an optimism, a hope, a belief that can verge into a shadow. And I feel like with people I know who have Sagittarian placements, it more often verges into hedonism. And I feel with Pisces, it more often verges into nihilism. And it's like the the optimism, the hope, the joy seeking, that becomes sort of dark and problematic in the Sagittarian way versus dark and problematic in the Piscean way, which is like an abdication of hope. It's like just vacating your own hope for a minute and then coming back to it. I think that's like, we hear this pop astrology idiom thing that is about the water in 3 states and the water signs. So Scorpio being water as ice, fixed water, and Cancer being water as like the ocean, and Pisces being water as vapor. And so that always comes to me a lot, is like this vapor cloud ability to just sort of like dissipate and disappear. I think there is a quality to dignified planets in Pisces. This is a feature, not a bug of the Pisces, but they can recede from their life a little bit, like that Simpsons meme of disappearing into the bushes. Like a Pisces can say, you know what, I'm burnt out on my own life and I need to take a little vacation from it into fantasy realm, into that big inner space that you're talking about, where someone like Albert Einstein generates ideas, or someone like Lady Gaga generates ideas. It's a vacation from the material reality into this probably unfathomably expansive realm of fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting. I feel like what we're talking about here, right, is almost like the difference between expansiveness and like porousness, or whatever the, yes, there's a receiving quality to the porousness, which is definitely here in Pisces. But when we're talking about figures like Lady Gaga, right? It's almost like what's the verb of porousness, of being able to seep into somebody's thoughts and feelings?
I think, Whitney, you're touching on something like in the art world that we use these words for. I'm going to see if maybe this is what you're talking about. Expression versus impression a little bit. Yeah, it's like expression is the more archetypally masculine form. I think that would be more of the fire Jupiter, the Sagittarius, the Tony Robbins, whereas like creating impressions or even receiving impressions would be more of that archetypally feminine.
Right, exactly. And it's like, okay, if you're using that whatever that 3 different water sign thing was you were talking about. Sorry, I'm not speaking intelligently here, but it's almost like the breathing in of the vapor, the absorbing of the vapor. Every freaking day I spray this like rose water on my face, right? I know you've got it too, Alexandra. And like the rose water like seeps in, right? It's not like just like, oh, washing your face with a wipe. It's like the seepage that is Pisces. And I think that what you're talking about, you know, Alexandra, with the nihilism, it's interesting because I've always associated that nihilism. I mean, it's a Jupiter quality, absolutely. And I've always, with my like malefic little Sag stellium, felt the nihilism from the Pisces side. But I can see, I'm sorry, at the Sagittarius side, but I can see exactly what you mean, because when as a Pisces, or in Pisces season, right, and we see all of these possibilities, there's still the ugly reality that like we're still human. We're still living here on Earth. And that's, I think, what we talk about as one of the quintessential challenges of Pisces, which is this reconciliation between transcendence and good old human reality, right?
That's where I think a lot of times when you see a sort of Pisces style self-sabotage or sabotage program, it'll be something like, this person is the most amazing thing I've ever met. They're incredible. There's an idealism, right, in a relational sense, like, oh my God, like, and then eventually that person has to fall off the pedestal. They have to become a human being who's annoying and doesn't do this and doesn't do that, blah, blah, blah. And there can be this sense of like, oh, okay, so that I got to toss that aside because this person, now I've got to go find the actual thing that's that. But it's a cat chasing his tail type of thing, because eventually Pisces, and this really gets to the Neptune quality too, that, you know, Neptune really has this very strong quality as well. eventually I think the archetypes of those ideas have to do is bring themselves to a place where they realize that that beauty and transcendence also exists in the messiness of human life. That the idiosyncrasies of other people or like are not like something that's necessarily a flaw, but part of what makes them unique and individual. And that's part of the Pisces conundrum, is this sense of always want to achieve the sense of Eden and oneness. And then as there's sort of an understanding that, yeah, this can be an incredible person or incredible job or incredible this or whatever it is, and it's never going to achieve what you've created in your mind because you created that in your mind. You created that ideal. It's not what's actually there. And then when you walk into it and you can accept those things, I think there's generally a less of like a sort of like, I have to toss this over for the next Eden. I have to toss this over for the next Eden. It's a pattern that I've observed over and over again. And when it comes under control, there's a lot of really recognition of this the beauty in the everyday, the transcendence immanence idea in theology.
Yes, that's so beautiful. See, I think that comes back around to the pop astrology thing about Pisces being a vaporous water sign, because Pisces is kind of the airiest water sign. And what you're describing is what I lovingly and colloquially call the air sign ick. But Pisces gets it too. They just get the Pisces ick. It's like it's so reliable. When I get the air sign, I'm like obsessed with something. I'm like, all I have to do is wait for the ick. And once I get the ick, I'll be free of this. And then I'm in the breeze and I'm off the hook of this crazy obsession. So, if Hudson Williams and Connor Story could just be pictured wearing flip-flops in public or something, I'd be free. But I think this is a good time to talk about Venus and Pisces, and
Yes.
what she wants there and what she does there. And it's a good time, as always, to remind everyone that a strong planet, a strong benefic, can sometimes feel just as uncomfortable as, any weak or undignified planet. So when I think about Venus functioning really strongly here, I'm thinking about social norms, in addition to things, of course, like beauty and style and fashion and love and friendships, which are all these things that we associate with women. But I think about a strong Venus here as being concerned with social norms and concerned with the ways that other people are thinking around them. And I can already hear how that would be helpful and not helpful. So what do you guys think about when you think about Venus and Pisces? Venus and Pisces.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think when you're talking about both sides, right? Sort of the shadow and the light that is a Venus in Pisces, we can definitely ask the question, like, sometimes with Venus in Pisces, you crank the dial up on idealism where it no longer becomes practical reality, right? And that idealism is great for dreaming, right? Like, hey, I would know. But it also can be part of what contributes, like we were just talking about, to that nihilism, right? Because the fact of the matter is life is not a dream, and we come up against challenges every single day, right? So the key is sort of strengthening both sides. But I think there is a effervescent optimism that is Venus in its exaltation, Pisces, right? There is a tendency to look through the rose-colored glasses. And those rose-colored glasses, if the world is dark, that can be a lifeline, And I think that one of the other greatest qualities of Venus in Pisces, or what describes Pisces in general as the place of Venus's exaltation, is that this is kind of the vibe where you've got right place, right time, but with the right people too. You know what I mean? And when you put that trifecta together, man, you got support,
I love that, because Venus in Pisces, I always think of as a magnetic, precious jewel. It's like something. So you're welcome. I'm going to really puff you up, Whitney. Here we go. So, but I always think of, like, So for good or for bad. So one thing I've noticed, and this is particular with Libra and Taurus risings who have Venus and Pisces, there's a sense
Lucky.
with them of yeah, there's a sense of sort of like magnetism, right? There's a sense of allure. There's a sense of like you're drawn to that, that sort of, you don't know, some sort of like ineffable quality that's there. And it's a wonderful thing because it can sort of make, like Alexandra is saying, like it makes things easier sometimes, right? You just kind of can pull to you what you need, or you're able to sort of, and I'm not saying doing this with any malicious intent, but almost hypnotize and pull in, right? But I've also heard when I work with clients who have this, and it's not just Venus ruling the ascendant, Venus and Pisces ruling the ascendant, it can be other places like boundary issues, and the idea that someone wants to possess the beautiful jewel, not appreciate it and love it, and want to maintain it and keep it contained and beautiful and safe, but actually wants to like hold it, and it becomes a little bit like Gollum in the Ring. There can be that quality to it too in the shadow side, where there's a feeling that there's this quality that's so unique and rare and precious that I need to hold when it's insecure. But when it's secure, it's like I just wanted to adore it and love it and make sure that it's well maintained. And I think that sometimes what I observe, and Whitney, you can tell me from firsthand experience, I'm not sure if this has happened to you, but like the balancing act with Venus and Pisces is knowing how to draw, like you said, like the right people, the right place, the right thing at the right time, but knowing when you have that combination correct, because if one of them's off, there becomes some sort of weird boundary issue, or like something got in too far too fast and you didn't realize it happened, or something along those lines.
It is. It's totally that tug. And, in my earlier years, even into my 20s, it was like I would attract these friends whom I adored, but who would end up almost like not the possessing quality, but like taking from me. Now there's some other shit in my chart that contributes to that, right? But I absolutely see that and resonate with that.
Yeah, I wonder too about the quality of the Venus in Pisces to be present in a relationship, and like what is required there because of the things that we talked about earlier, the vapor and the fantasy. It feels like that's like a strong quality of a Venus in Pisces. But of course, now I'm filtering all of this through the lens of all the people I know with Venus and Pisces. I feel like that this is a good time to bring in a little bit about Mercury as well, and just open us up to talking about that and all of the planets now. We'll get to Neptune eventually. But I think Mercury in Pisces is one of the more interesting. It's one of the more interesting points of the dignity scheme, because on the other end is the other more interesting point of the dignity scheme, which is that Mercury has both its domicile and its exaltation in Virgo, and it is both in detriment and in fall in Pisces. And I feel like this is such a curious point. It makes sense geometrically when you look at things like the Thema Mundi and you say, oh, matchy-matchy, and its oppositional qualities. And Mercury is neither benefic nor malefic. It's neither day nor night sect. So it makes sense from that perspective. You would have a hard time selling me on the fact that Mercury is doomed or even poorly situated, frankly, in either Sagittarius or Pisces, but particularly in Pisces, because as you said, Whitney, it is a sign of dignity for both benefics. So it's hard for me to understand the argument or have much sympathy for my clients when they come to me and they say, I'm doomed because my Mercury's in Pisces. I'm like, you're not. Sit down, pull out a pen. Odin agrees. Odin just got heated. Odin is in defense of Mercury in Pisces. And we're, of course, in this moment right here where we have Mercury retrograding through Pisces. I mean, I just feel like this is actually quite a misunderstood placement. What do you guys think?
Alex, you go first because my dog is having a
Odin needs
attack.
his moment. He needs his moment. No, I think that's so true, because if you think about, talking about art and talking about poetry, talking about the ability to like write sci-fi or create a video game, that's all Mercury in Pisces. The ability to imagine something that is not currently real. What Earth and air signs, so Virgo and Gemini, which are Mercury's home signs, tend to get caught up on fact and things that are. It's a fact. It's tangible. I know it. It's something that can be known rationally. Pisces is the opposite of that. Pisces is the realm of the imagination, things that are unknown, things that have not been yet. And so, whenever I see Mercury in Pisces, and that's kind of how I try to explain it to clients sometimes, like think of someone who would make a video game, a fantasy world that requires a technical implementation to bring to somebody's nervous system in a way that they understand it. Music is another way of thinking about Mercury and Pisces, right? There's a sense of something that's kind of ineffable and something that doesn't necessarily, you can't touch. You hear it, but you can't sort of grasp it. And it has emotional and energetic effects on you that you can't quite understand. But it's communicated like when a musician communicates somebody's piece beautifully through their instrument or through their voice. That's Mercury in Pisces. So I think, like, does Mercury in Pisces or Mercury in Sagittarius, do they sometimes get hopped up on something that's fantasy as opposed to reality? Yeah. Can they tell tall tales? Sure. Can they veer into the land of delusion and not know exactly what is real? That's all possibility. But I think that we overlook the strengths of having a planet like Mercury in a sign that is beyond material reality, and that can pull through into material reality.
Okay, I only missed the very first part of that, dealing with the child over there. But I love what you're saying about the relationship to the fantasy world and also the musical quality of Mercury in Pisces, because it's almost like, we think of Mercury in communication as the written word, right? The art of the written word. And there are many examples of Mercury and Pisces performing strongly with the written word in like poetry versus prose, right? Fiction over nonfiction, right? But it's really interesting because when you were saying that, it was giving me this image of Mercury in Pisces as Hermes' lyre, right? Hermes invented the lyre, that little old harp instrument, right? There's a musical quality to it. And I think that the differentiation becomes, and why we look at the dignity scheme this way, is that Mercury, when you're talking about Mercury in Virgo, it's like the precision and the classification and the discrimination, right? There's something that separates to that quality, right? Whereas Pisces is a sign of merging. So therein you have the opposition, right? With Mercury's job being to generally distinguish, and Pisces just refusing to distinguish. Pisces wanting to bring things together. And so it feels to me like that's where it comes from. Like, the thing is that Mercury does love connections, just like Pisces loves connections, but it's more analytical rather than relational, right? Remembering that this is the sign of Venus's exaltation.
Yeah, I think one of the words that just increasingly comes up for me around Virgo, Mercury in Virgo specifically, is like eccentric and very particular, which all makes sense tying back into that Virgo iconography and the archetype there. But I think that it's interesting to imagine, because people assume that Virgos are sort of like ruthlessly methodical. That's not, I don't think that is the feeling of a Mercury in Virgo. That is more like a Mercury maybe in Scorpio, right? Or like in like the sun in Virgo or something. Or maybe a Capricorn situation. I could see the argument for that. But I think Mercury in Virgo is very just particular and almost can be eccentric in a way. I always think of Wes Anderson or some of these more these directors of film who are so particular. David Fincher, who shoots scenes 150 times and then got into a huge fight with Jake Gyllenhaal because he turns to the cameraman. He goes, delete the last 40 takes. You know, it's like, no, I know what I want. I don't know how to tell you it, but I'll know it when I see it. Like that's also a Mercury in Virgo. So I feel like Mercury and Pisces can have a dissolving around the expectation and around that singular vision. It's no less maybe eccentric and no less expressive and no less opinionated, but maybe it's slightly less attached to one specific outcome or the I'll know it when I see it feeling.
It's more merged. It's like, because I think,
Mm.
Michael loves Wes Anderson and actually introduced me to it. I'd never really seen much of his stuff before, but that precision with which he, like, the camera is here and you can tell it is there to get this angle at this place, and that, like, that's that Virgo quality. And then you see something more like Mercury and Pisces would not just see that one angle on getting the angle here. It would see like there's a whole combination of things that could come together in a sort of more of like a watercolor than this sort of like angular presentation. I think it's like a really interesting way of putting it. That's a beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah, that's so interesting because it is that, yeah, that Wes Anderson vibe is so angular is a good way to describe it, right? The way each scene, each picture on the screen is composed in such a very intentional way. And then, yeah, you you compare that to, like we were talking about, impressionism and impressionistic painting, right? Van Gogh, and that is such a totally different quality, right? And I think that that comes to the fact that the goal of Mercury in Pisces, yes, planets who are in their detriment and fall in a sign do have goals still, right? The goal of Mercury in Pisces is to feel something, right? To feel something rather than to like know something.
That was really brilliant. I was looking up some charts manically because I think Wes Anderson natally has Jupiter in Virgo with Uranus, which is interesting. But he has a fixed Mercury. And so I was thinking about what we were talking about the obsessive quality. That is why I said maybe a Mercury in Scorpio. I'm like, oh, yeah, that fixed Mercury is what actually keeps you on track with that vision. Because I think a Mercury in Virgo is a little more like mutable, no less particular, right? And I also am thinking of the angular word. I'm just teaching the world art words today, but what you guys are describing is like called kerning, and in graphic design, that's where you're like fixing the corners and the edges. But sort of it has been used colloquially to describe, setting up a table so that the space between the objects and the table look just right. It's that angular sort of quality that you're describing. So my Mercury in Gemini is popping off today, obviously, represented in the conversation. I want to make honorable mention to Neptune and Pisces, and I think, Alex, that you are also usually our soapbox hauler, outer, and operator for the outer planetary conversation. And Whitney and Alex and I think, feel all pretty aligned on the outers. You want to deliver our manifesto?
Outer planets don't rule signs, and I will say when I learned the ancient system, it changed my practice and the accuracy of my readings infinitely. But I think outer planets have affinities with signs. They're similar to, and I think Neptune is very similar to Pisces. In many, many different ways. I think Pluto is very, very similar to Scorpio, and like we've said, and I will not get on the soapbox, it is on the shelf. I am keeping it on the shelf. Uranus, to me, has a lot in common with Gemini. But in common with those signs, it's like their energy and the energy of that sign are much more congruent and harmonious. It's like Uranus is tough in Taurus because Uranus is erratic and Taurus does not like things to be erratic or unstable. So it's like, it's not that Uranus is in detriment there, it's just that the energy of the culture of Taurus and the energy of Uranus don't necessarily get along. There's a lot of friction there. But yeah, Neptune and Pisces. So it's funny. So you guys know who listen a lot. Neptune's conjunct my sun, my ascendant ruler, and years ago, a client of mine, when I was still doing Reiki, hands-on Reiki before COVID, she inadvertently gave me like this compliment that was so out of the blue. She goes, you're kind of elusive. And I was like, for my ego ate that up. I'm like, yeah, I'm like a man of mystery. Like, I was like, but it has that same kind of like what I've taken having Neptune, just my experience with Neptune and learning how to be someone who has a strongly placed Neptune in the chart is there is that feeling where you can kind of disappear and let the projection of you still exist. But it's you can change how you're sort of located, and it's a really interesting it has a lot to do, I think, with Pisces too. This idea not necessarily just of projection, but of that I can transform into this to show you something, but I can also be kind of safe inside of myself and not have to project all of myself out there at the same time. Can that be problematic? Sure. But I think there is that kind of more what's the word? That vapor quality that Neptune shares very, very, very strongly with Pisces.
That's so interesting, the way you speak about the projection piece of it, because I definitely think that projection does fit into a Pisces world, right? Along with adjectives like mystical and dreamlike and psychic sensitivity, right? But yeah, the portals, the portals are here. But what I'm thinking. Oh my God, you guys, I'm just gonna giggle my way through the end of this episode. But what you're talking about with the projection piece of it, it's almost the way that I look at Jupiter in this sign, because Zeus is a shapeshifter, right? Zeus is this sort of an immutable sign. It's ever changing, right? Zeus is always like evading consequence or getting with some woman, human or god.
Yeah, he's super horny too. Like, let's just say it.
Exactly. But
Call it out.
through that shapeshifter quality, which I think we can in this context liken with projection. Now, where I think the archetype of Neptune starts to dissolve is like when Pisces isn't confused though, right? Pisces isn't confused, it's permeable, it's accepting all possibilities. And then when I think of like Neptune and or Poseidon, right, there is an intense like volatility that we get when we talk about the archetype of that god. It feels more like Mars in Pisces or Mars and Saturn in Pisces with that sort of Neptune Poseidon thing. And I've been playing with this idea because, I know you're going to like this, Alexandra, because you share the Norse mythology with me, is that I almost like there is a Norse god called Aegir, who is the god of the sea in Norse mythology. And I almost think that Aegir fits here better than like a Neptune Poseidon, because Aegir is a giant. He is ancient. He is older than the gods, right? Like Jupiter is a giant, right? Aegir is also known for being the best host and hosting these lavish feasts in his kingdom. He's the brewer of ale. And so people are sharing intoxication with one another. Doesn't that sound like the, kind of Neptune piece of this whole archetype? And I just think that is all this Aegir archetype is like, just wildly Jupiterian through the lens of Pisces, that I've been kind of playing with that idea of like, okay, maybe Aegir's ruling Pisces over like a modern signification of Neptune. Obviously knowing that we are all traditional Hellenistic astrologers and we're not assigning signification willy-nilly. There's my disclaimer, but it's fun to play with.
Totally. Oh, I think that is really beautiful because of I mean, I can go pretty far with that in the Norse mythology. So I actually love that. I think it's interesting that you guys bring up the more contentious aspect of the deities that are associated here. And I think where we get into trouble with assigning one-to-one relationships from culture to culture, even from system to system within a culture, right? Like Hellenistic astrology to the myths, is like a lot of these myths and stories as they make it down to us have been synthesized, syncretized, castrated, reformed, edited, remade, Christianized. It's like we're possibly 10 gods in one god. We're getting possibly stories that were written about somebody else. So it can be difficult. But I love that idea, Whitney. I'm going to go pretty far with that. I think there's maybe one other thing that I wanted to mention when we think about Neptune and Pisces, which is that Neptune in Pisces historically is associated with the birth of Impressionism as we know it. So the very idea that a painter would look at a canvas and make an interpretive statement is related to Neptune and Pisces, because before that, basically all of technology and all of the ways that we interpret the world are analogs at first of something else. So painting was trying to be as photorealistic as possible. And when photography was invented, also associated with Neptune and Pisces, photographers were trying to make their photos look like paintings. So paintings were trying to look like reality, and photos were trying to look like paintings. They would put like Vaseline on the lens or hose on the lens to make it look gauzy like a painting, because it was trying to sort of like imitate what we already knew. It's very hard in that Piscean way to imagine something from scratch, to imagine something brand new that's never been done before, which is what happened when Neptune was in Pisces and we got people like Claude Monet saying, what if I could paint a picture that looks the way that I feel when I see water lilies on the lake? That is actually a crazy thing to think. That is actually so worth celebrating till the end of time, when somebody can create something that has never been created before, like that Einstein effect or, the Claude Monet effect and that Neptune and Pisces thing.
We saw they brought a collection of Monets down to the Museum of Fine Arts downtown that we went to see. I think it was last year. And it's interesting you're talking about this in this way, Alexandra, because it's like when you were looking at, and these were paintings I had never seen before. I love art, but I'm not really, huge on understanding it. But there was this sense of also like you see the world that he's trying to show you, and you know what it is, but you can lend so much of yourself to that world. It's that projection, right? You could see, there was one particular one of what looks like a seaside town, and I can't remember the name of it now, but it had this incredible way of like, you could tell it was like kind of a stormy or dark cloud, but then there was a beautiful sea underneath in some way.
Yeah.
And it just had this feeling of like, I could see myself not necessarily in that place, but a place that was like that. It's like it expands your conception out of like a literal thing into you imagine yourself in a place like that projective type of quality.
Okay, that's so cool. I love how we are tying Neptune to, like, you kind of blew my mind, Alexandra, with the Neptune tie-in to the Impressionistic period. I think that is so fascinating. I also love that the artist in you is shining in this episode, and just generally art is shining. Yeah. Right, because art is Piscean, right? Art is made to make you feel something. That's what you were saying, Alex, right? And I think that just brings it together so beautifully.
Art is also so Neptunian, and my favorite, like, classical art period anyway, is post-impressionism. So I'm like, Neptune and Aries, wow me, baby. Let's see some good ass art in the next 14 years. I'm ready, because that's where it was last time. I think this is a good point to kind of make our closing arguments or any closing statements that we have about Jupiter in Pisces, Venus in Pisces, Mercury in Pisces, Neptune, and just like the Piscean sea in general. What kind of any closing arguments you guys have here?
Alex, you go first. Or I can
It's
go
really
first.
good. Go ahead. You go first. You go first. I'm formulating. I have one, but I have to get the other.
Okay. I'm going to use some inspiration from you when I say this, so hopefully I'm not stealing your point here. But I think if I am giving advice to a Pisces, regardless of the planets in the sign, just the archetypal quality, right? Pisces, you magnetize. Like, your gift lies in the way you magnetize those, sorry if I'm repeating myself, but not sorry, the right people and the right experiences to you. And the thing that is so special about you is that it is not about pursuit. It is about permeability and the way that you feel, the things that you feel. And that makes a difference, right? And on that more shadow side, if moving through this plane that is reality sometimes feels too much, like, remember your humanity, right? The depth of your feeling is what contributes to the broadness of your mind, and you can't get one without the other. Like, Pisces is both vast and deep, and that's what I got.
I think mine is we didn't quite touch on this, but your compassion is your superpower. And if your ability to sense the feeling of another, the suffering of another, is your superpower. And it's also important to remember boundaries with it. I think boundaries are one of the biggest things that Pisces work with because of that vapor. It's hard to contain vapor. But I think that, that idea that you can feel and understand the sort of felt quality of something else or somebody else's experience, yes, that can be overwhelming, and sometimes, it needs to be managed. But it also is a superpower. And it's something that I think, God knows, I think the world could use much more of right now. I think the shadow of that is just recognizing that you can overstep your boundaries for yourself very easily and not know where, like, you end and somebody else begins, and how to, like, not burn out on that awareness of what's going on around you. But you can learn that. It's something you can't learn. And I think it's just never take your compassion for granted, because it's a beautiful quality and we need it.
I feel like the devil on the shoulder after you just delivered that, because I feel like I have the opposite advice for certain people. Not everybody needs this advice, but I think of, forgive me, Lord, but I'm thinking of a character from Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, Odo, who is a goo man. He is made of goo,
Yeah.
but he spends his entire life assuming the shape of a human. And when he's 40 or whatever in human years, he's like actually ancient, right? But like when he's like at his midlife crisis in the show, he's like, I could just be goo. I've only been acting human to make everyone else more comfortable. And why do I even have a job? I don't even need to eat. It's like coming to awareness as being truly something other. And so I feel like, yes, boundaries are of course important, but there's also maybe a time in a mutable, especially Pisces life, where it's like, but I could be anything. I actually don't have to figure out how to hold the shape of a human and how to hold this boundaried edge of a human. I'm putty, and I can maybe play with that and embrace that. So I feel like there's some people need that version of the advice too.
Can be goo.
Be a goo man, dude. He goes on a whole arc, but
in short, for the Pisces Virgo axis, there's nothing wrong with you. That's the crux of it. There is nothing
that's actually
wrong with
the
you.
crux of it. And in fact, exploring your freakiness might really lead you somewhere awesome. You might
for both signs, Virgo and Pisces.
think about the Albert Einstein of it all. And yes, definitely in the Virgo. But that's definitely for another time. Thank you guys so much for joining me to talk about the Pisces dignities. Tell everybody where they can find your lovely selves.
Venus and Pisces go first.
Okay, thank you. I'm receiving. You can, if anything of this talk today resonated with you, please go book a reading with me. You can do that at astroarcana.com, and check me out on YouTube, where I am doing a very Venus in Pisces thing and combining my love of fashion with my love of astrology in a new little series I'm calling Astro Style. You
So
can
good.
also find me, same place, astro.arcana.astrology on Instagram, and that's the whole thing.
Those are two of my favorite things, and I'm so excited to binge like all of that.
Maybe
Oh my
we're
God.
gonna do an Astro Style episode. I don't know.
Yes.
Let's hear it in the comments. I'm not gonna lie, I'm like a little scared to bring it to Nightlight, because Nightlight is so rigorously academic but I think it's the reason why
You're
love
good,
it is
dude.
just such
You
a
don't have to
fun-
be
Hey,
a
no.
human.
You're right. Okay, you're
My
right.
Libra moon is screaming
Okay.
right now, screaming to do
All
this.
right.
Who am I? What am I doing? I have.
Alexandra
I'm
Blair,
Alex.
So succinct.
AlexAmorosi.com. You can book readings with me there. And by the way, I consider myself the Virgo and the Neptune Pisces whisperer. So if you have strong placement, strong Neptune in your chart, you're working with, projection, where you end, someone else begins, especially psychic energetic boundaries. I've been helping with people with that for years, before I even knew astrology. So you can book sessions with me there, AlexAmorosi.com. And then you can also find me on Substack at The Subtle Universe.
Yes, Alex has helped me with that, and I agree. Alex Amorosi, so succinct, Pisces, Neptune, whisperer, boundary conjurer. It's like, here's a mold, fit this, like, do this. I am Alexandra Blair. 9 Lives Astrology is where you can find me. The number 9, livesastrology.com. On YouTube, I do transit reports. On Instagram. Have an incredible weekend, you guys. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everyone.